Good morning. The subcommittee will come to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recess at any time. Pursuant to Committee Rule 2E and House Rule 11, the chair announces that he may postpone roll call votes. Pursuant to notice, the Subcommittee on Energy meets to consider the following measures: H.R. 2986, the BEST Act; H.R. 5374, the Advanced Geothermal Research and Development Act of 2019; and H.R. 5428, the Grid Modernization Research and Development Act of 2019. We meet today to mark up three good bipartisan bills. The BEST Act is authored by our colleague from Illinois, Dr. Foster. It will authorize research, development, and demonstration of energy storage technologies, specifically aiming at advanced technologies with varying energy storage durations and ensuring that the research covers a diverse set of technologies, including batteries, pumped hydro, and others. National labs, academia, private industry, and environmental groups all deserve credit because they were all engaged in the making of this bill. It is endorsed by the Energy Storage Association, Chamber of Commerce, ClearPath, and Duke Energy, among others. Next is the Advanced Geothermal Research and Development Act of 2019, and we are authorizing DOE to research, develop, demonstrate geothermal energy technologies, and is sponsored by our ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Lucas. He will talk more about it, I'm sure, but it requires DOE to explore oil and gas technologies that could be used for geothermal, advancing the use of computer modeling, establishing up to 3 field research sites to advance the development and demonstration of enhanced geothermal energy technologies in varying geographies across the U.S. It's particularly important for encouraging the exploration of this resource in the eastern U.S. We have received a lot of input supported by the Geothermal Resources Council, Chamber of Commerce, ClearPath, and Third Way. Very much appreciate Ranking Member Lucas's effort to reach across the aisle on this one, and that is why the chair of the full committee, Ms. Johnson, is an original co-sponsor. This week of all weeks, I think we can applaud that bipartisan work. Finally, we will consider the Grid Modernization Research and Development Act of 2019. In order for us to use all the new energy technologies that we've been talking about and authorizing on this committee all year, we also need to seriously advance our electric grid. This bill seeks to do that, addressing the R&D. I would like to thank my colleague from Washington, Ms. Herrera-Butler, for joining me in introducing this legislation, and I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to support it. Look forward to advancing it out of our subcommittee today. I would now normally recognize the ranking member of the subcommittee, Mr. Weber, for opening remarks, but I believe he's going to submit a statement for the record before he joins us. Okay. And we will move on to consider H.R. 2986, the BEST Act. The clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 2986, a bill.
Without objection, the bill is considered as read and open to amendment at any point. I recognize the gentleman from Illinois to present any remarks on the bill.
Thank you, Chairman Lamb and Ranking Member Weber. I am proud that the committee today is advancing H.R. 2986, the bipartisan Best Energy Storage Act, Better Energy Storage Act, or so-called BEST Act, led by myself, Mr. Caston, Ms. Herrera-Butler, and Mr. Gonzalez. I want to thank my friends on the other side of the aisle for working with me to develop a bill that will address grid resiliency and climate change, 2 of the critically important issues facing our country today. Developing advanced energy storage technologies will allow us to modernize our electric grid and reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. I'll speak more on the bill when I introduce an amendment in the nature of a substitute, but in the meantime, I urge all my colleagues to support this bill. Yield back.
Thank you, Dr. Foster. Anyone else have anything to add on this bill? Nope. We will now proceed with the amendments in the order of the roster. The first amendment on the roster is an amendment in the nature of a substitute offered by the gentleman from Illinois. He is recognized to offer an amendment.
I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment number 1. Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 2986, offered by Mr. Foster.
I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading. Without objection, so ordered. I recognize the gentleman for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm introducing an amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 2986, the Bipartisan Better Energy Storage Technology, or BEST Act, a bill that I introduced along with Mr. Caston, Ms. Herrera-Butler, and Mr. Gonzalez. The bill currently has 44 other bipartisan co-sponsors, including Chairwoman Johnson and Ranking Member Weber of this committee. The fight against climate change is one of the defining issues of our time. We are working hard every day to develop solutions to help address this critical issue, and energy storage is essential for making progress toward a clean energy economy. These technologies take many forms, including battery, pumped hydropower, and thermal energy storage. The development of cost-effective storage systems will help reduce the intermittency issues of renewable generation sources like wind and solar energy, and will help match the baseload sources of power like nuclear and hydro to the variable demand of our economy, and will also help provide grid services such as frequency and voltage regulation to ensure that electric consumers receive reliable and resilient power. In my home district of Illinois, researchers at Argonne National Lab are leading a nationwide effort to advance the state of advanced batteries, including the development of novel cathode, anode, and electrolyte designs, as well as new material synthesis and characterization tools. In particular, Argonne National Lab is the home of the Joint Center for Energy Storage Research, also known as JCESR, which is a $24 million annual investment made by the Department of Energy to develop transformative battery storage technologies that go beyond lithium-ion batteries. And that's why I'm very pleased to see the Energy Subcommittee advance the Better Energy Storage Technology Act today. This bill sets forth a cross-cutting program at the Department of Energy to advance a suite of storage technologies. It directs DOE to establish a research and development program to coordinate acts across relevant program offices to make progress towards developing cost-effective, sustainable energy storage systems, including testing and validation activities. The bill also directs the department to develop a 5-year strategic plan to continue to identify and refine research goals for the program. Finally, the bill authorizes an energy storage demonstration program, as well as a technical assistance program to help put more energy storage systems on the electric grid. I'd be remiss if I did not acknowledge the hard work of my colleague on the Science Committee, Mr. Caston, who introduced the Promoting Grid Storage Act of 2019. His bill contained many important provisions that have been included here to strengthen the version of the BEST Act that we are considering in front of the committee today. The BEST Act now provides technical assistance and grants and authorizes an energy storage system demonstration program, both of which were included in the Promoting Grid Storage Act of 2019. So I urge my colleagues to support my amendment and final passage of the bill. And with that, I yield back.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Mr. Caston is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Lamb. There is a growing and bipartisan recognition that grid-scale energy storage technologies will be an essential part of tomorrow's grid. And the BEST Act reflects that growing consensus by providing critical research funds to help ensure that the U.S. maintains its leadership in the grid of the future. I really want to thank my colleague, Mr. Foster, for introducing this important piece of legislation. I am proud to be a co-sponsor of the BEST Act, and I'm happy to see it being considered here today. There are many benefits of energy storage technologies, but perhaps the most critical will be the role they can play in helping us to decarbonize the power sector, and in so doing, to combat the climate crisis. One of the largest barriers that we have to the deployment of clean energy resources is whether we have a grid that has the requisite transmission, reliability, and flexibility to handle the increases in intermittent and non-traditional power sources. While we certainly need to invest in many different upgrades to the grid to achieve our climate goals, we have to do grid energy storage because it is so hard to permit transmission. And until we solve that permitting problem, grid-scale energy storage is going to be the way to get that through. The sun doesn't always shine, the wind does not always blow, but the loads of the grid tend to be consistent in ways that are not always consistent with where that generation comes from. So improved energy storage will allow for the utilization of more intermittent power generators more efficiently, like wind turbines and solar panels. Storage can also help increase the reliability and resiliency of the electric system during and after extreme weather events. So if we want to both lower greenhouse gas emissions and maintain a stable grid, Or in fact, if we only want one of those things, we must invest in far greater energy storage capacity. The transition to a low-carbon, clean energy economy requires a commitment to research, demonstration, and deployment of new and improved energy storage systems across the grid. That's why, in addition to being a proud supporter of the BEST Act, I was proud to introduce H.R. 2909, the Promoting Grid Storage Act of 2019, which, among other things, would authorize a new cross-cutting energy storage R&D program at the Department of Energy while providing technical assistance and competitive demonstration grants to localities, states, tribal governments, and private sector actors seeking to further develop and de-risk these technologies. The bill would create a competitive grant program for energy storage at the Department of Energy that would uniquely empower local entities to identify specific demonstration projects and compete for funds at Department of Energy instead of waiting for the DOE to identify potential projects to fund. Like the BEST Act, this effort is bipartisan and bicameral and builds upon the President's budget request for greater storage R&D at the Department of Energy. I believe that the Promoting Grid Storage Act is an important complementary effort to the BEST Act, and I was proud to work with Representative Foster, Chairman Lamb, and their staffs to incorporate many of the key provisions from that bill into this amendment in the nature of a substitute. I'm glad we were able to come together on this legislation. I'd like to sincerely thank my colleagues and their dedicated staffs for working with me and my team to incorporate these provisions into this amendment. I believe this makes an already important piece of legislation all the more impactful in accomplishing the critical goal of developing, de-risking, and deploying energy storage to the grid. I applaud the committee for taking up this critical issue, and I urge my colleagues to vote yes on this amendment and the BEST Act. I yield back.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? The vote will occur on the amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. A reporting quorum being present, I move that the Energy Subcommittee of the Science, Space, and Technology Committee report H.R. 2986 as amended to the full committee with the recommendation that the bill be approved. Those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is favorably reported. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. I ask unanimous consent that staff be authorized to make any necessary technical and conforming changes to the bill. Without objection, so ordered. Members will have 2 subsequent calendar days in which to submit supplemental, minority, or additional views on the measure. We will now consider H.R. 5374, the Advanced Geothermal Research and Development Act of 2019. The clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 5374, a bill.
Without objection, the bill is considered as read and open to amendment at any point. I recognize Ranking Member Lucas to present his remarks on the bill.
Thank you, Chairman Lamb. This morning, I'm grateful for the opportunity to discuss my bill, H.R. 5374, the Advanced Geothermal Research and Development Act of 2019, which is co-sponsored by Chairwoman Johnson and authorizes research, development, and demonstration of innovative geothermal energy technologies at the Department of Energy. Geothermal energy systems draw from the constant and natural occurring heat that radiates beneath the surface of the earth. This heat is a source of clean, renewable energy that is always on. Our country has significant geothermal resources, and if harnessed correctly, these resources could provide secure baseload power and energy storage for Americans across the country. Yet, although the United States leads the world in installed geothermal capacity, geothermal energy contributes less than 1% of the total utility-scale U.S. electrical generation. This is because today's geothermal energy technologies are often too expensive, time-consuming, or risky for industry to take to scale. While I've seen the potential for geothermal in my district in Oklahoma, more work needs to be done to allow the rest of the country to access the full power of this resource. In order to effectively leverage these vast, untapped energy resources, geothermal technologies and techniques must become more efficient and less expensive for American consumers. Fortunately, we are uniquely positioned to prioritize the basic and early stage research that leads to groundbreaking technology. Federally funded research programs have a history of paving the way for industry innovation. So I'm pleased to see DOE and its Geothermal Technologies Office taking the lead in this valuable science. It's critically important to our clean energy future that we have the support they need to pursue research that industry cannot undertake. My legislation will provide DOE with critical funding and program direction to enable innovative research in advanced geothermal technologies, strengthening the U.S. geothermal workforce and encourage international collaboration. More specifically, it will authorize and expand the Department's early-stage research in enhanced geothermal systems and the major user facilities needed to support this work. H.R. 5374 will also authorize a new program to advance geothermal computing and data science R&D. This will leverage DOE's best-in-the-world computerization capacities to provide geothermal researchers with modeling and simulation tools that will allow them to more accurately understand complex subsurface systems. With these tools, industry can improve the next generation of geothermal technologies using advanced designs to save time and money in planning and produce more power efficiently with less impact on the environment. We know that American industry has the resources to successfully commercialize new technology. What they often lack is the infrastructure to conduct early-stage research and test new technologies. This is where DOE, the national labs, and academia can help provide experimental facilities and computerization tools that will drive costs down and innovation forward. If we want to ensure a diverse portfolio of clean energy technologies now and in the future, we in Congress should prioritize this important fundamental research. I want to thank Chairwoman Johnson and her staff for working with me on this legislation. I believe this bill is an excellent example of our shared goals on this committee, and I will look forward to continuing to work with you all to support this common sense, productive, bipartisan legislation. And I yield back the balance of my time, Mr. Chairman.
Does anyone else wish to be recognized?
Move to strike the last word.
Mr. Caston is recognized for 5 minutes.
I'd like to thank Chairwoman Johnson and Ranking Member Lucas for their leadership on this bill to help advance geothermal energy resource. It's a good bill, and it takes important steps towards advancing a woefully underutilized source of energy. I'd like to see if we could, before we get to full committee markup, though, if we could work together to ensure the bill develops geothermal energy where the potential is highest. And this is going to be a little bit counterintuitive. We don't often think of the places like Illinois and the Northeast as places where there's a big geothermal potential because we don't have a lot of volcanoes or hot springs or those sorts of things. But the potential, the market potential for geothermal energy is a function of the source of the heat, the load, and the temperature delta. And so when you've got a lot of residential homes and even not super high-grade heat coming down from under the subsurface area, but you do have a nice delta T in the wintertime, there's actually a really good potential for geothermal energy. And that's actually consistent with a recent Department of Energy report. Their GeoVision report shows that the geothermal heat potential is highest in Midwestern states like Illinois, in Northeastern states like New York. I raised this, I was talking with Congressman Tonko about this recently, and we're both interested in making sure that this novel research in geothermal energy does occur where it can be most useful. So as we move forward, I'd be grateful if we could consider more provisions that ensure geothermal research occurs in those high potential areas in the Northeast and Midwest. Thank you again to Chairwoman Johnson and Ranking Member Lucas for your work on this. I really do appreciate your leadership and commitment to developing this important area of energy, and I hope we can work together to ensure those provisions are included. I yield the remainder of my time.
Does anyone else wish to be recognized? We will now proceed with the amendments in the order of the roster. The first amendment on the roster is an amendment offered by the gentleman from Illinois. He is recognized to offer an amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment number 1, amendment to H.R. 5374, offered by Mr. Lipinski.
I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading. Without objection, so ordered. Recognize the gentleman for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to commend the committee for its bipartisan work on this bill. Ranking Member Lucas for introducing this bill, and Chairwoman Johnson for also working together with Mr. Lucas to move this forward. Climate change has long been among my greatest concerns, and efforts like this to promote alternative energy sources will contribute to a cleaner future with lower greenhouse gas emissions. As we discuss geothermal energy, most immediately, the geysers of Yellowstone come to mind. Much of this bill emphasizes a pathway to harness that dramatic energy into an electricity generation source. While we don't have any geysers like that in my home state of Illinois, we do have researchers working to advance direct use applications of lower temperature geothermal energy, such as heating and cooling buildings. As Mr. Caston mentioned, the applications are great all across the country. Illinois has abundant groundwater resources that are well suited for direct geothermal heat exchange systems that could meet our heating needs during cold Midwest winters. The University of Illinois is currently advancing research in these areas. The university even designed a novel geothermal heating and cooling system on the engineering campus. It is also conducting a feasibility study to convert the university president's house to be heated and cooled by a geothermal system as part of its strategy to reduce campus greenhouse gas emissions. I believe that these low-temperature direct applications should be part of the climate change solution, make sure it's part of this bill. A study was published just last week, led by researchers from Columbia University Center on Global Energy Policy, which suggests that further innovation on heat pumps, combined with regulatory measures, could reduce global greenhouse gas emissions from the heating and cooling sectors by 12%. I thank the committee staff for working with my office to identify ways to expand research and demonstration in these areas. I'm offering this amendment to direct the Department of Energy's Geothermal Technologies Office to support a research, development, and demonstration program into geothermal heat pumps and the direct use of geothermal energy. The program will investigate new geothermal technologies for building-scale energy storage, seasonal energy storage, heating for neighborhoods and large commercial buildings, among other areas. This program also directs the Department of Energy to consider and mitigate any environmental impacts from these geothermal projects. I thank the committee for considering this amendment, and I urge my colleagues to support it. I yield back my time.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Mr. Ranking Member, you are
Thank you,
recognized.
sir. The gentleman's amendment on page 3, line 18. I'll give you a minute to get there, Daniel. Page 3, line 18. You're calling for E, the use of alternative fluids as a heat exchange medium, such as hot water found in mines and mine shafts, gray water, or other fluids that may improve the economics of geothermal heat pumps. Under the other mediums, you've got mines and mine shafts, and line 18 says gray water. What do you anticipate is the source of that gray water?
Well, I'm going to have to refer to staff to give me a good answer on that one.
I thank the gentleman. I yield back.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Okay, the vote will occur on the amendment. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. Are there any other amendments? If not, a reporting quorum being present, I move that the Energy Subcommittee on the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology report H.R. 5374 as amended to the full committee with the recommendation that the bill be approved. Those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is favorably reported. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. I ask unanimous consent that staff be authorized to make any necessary technical and conforming changes to the bill. Without objection, so ordered. Members will have 2 subsequent calendar days in which to submit supplemental, minority, or additional views on the measure. We will now consider H.R. 5428, the Grid Modernization Research and Development Act of 2019. The clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 5428, a bill to amend the Energy Independence and Security Act of 2007 and the Energy Policy Act of 2005 to direct federal research in grid modernization and security for other purposes.
Without objection, the bill is considered as read and open to amendment at any point. I recognize myself to present remarks on the bill. Happy that we are now considering the bipartisan Grid Modernization Research and Development Act, led by myself and Ms. Herrera Butler of Washington. We all know electricity is critical to our modern economy. Our nation's grid is what powers hospitals, schools, factories, obviously homes. We've seen a lot of changes recently in how our electricity is generated and how it gets delivered. And as the costs of energy generated from natural gas and renewable sources have gotten lower, these same sources are growing at a rapid rate. This trend is projected to continue for at least the next 30 years. And the system of power plants, transformers, wires, and sensors that carry our electricity today are not yet ready for that transformation. I think many of us have seen that in different ways in our own districts. We need to invest in research that allows for advancements and adoption of new technologies and that protects our critical electric infrastructure from natural disasters. The Department of Energy has an important role to play in this transition. That's why I'm proud to sponsor this bill. We're setting forth a research agenda on topics in grid modernization, directing DOE to develop modeling, simulation, visualization tools to help with the successful operation and control of the grid. The bill also authorizes research and development activities to improve resilience and emergency response, which will help us develop tools and methods that local communities and utilities need to withstand and address the effects of natural disasters on the grid. The bill also adds important new research on hybrid energy systems that will better integrate nuclear, renewable, storage, and carbon capture technologies onto the grid. This is critical for the grid to adopt and integrate new technologies that will help us to achieve a cleaner energy future as quickly, cost-effectively, and efficiently as possible. It would also advance the integration of buildings and vehicles with the electrical grid and direct the Secretary of Energy to establish an industry alliance that is broadly representative of U.S. expertise in electrical grid R&D, infrastructure, operations, and manufacturing to help the Secretary identify R&D needs, assess progress, and update relevant technology roadmaps about the electrical grid. This bill will help our nation. It will help us to develop the tools and technologies we need to ensure resilience and reliability. It is endorsed by the Edison Electric Institute, the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association, Duke Energy, and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. I want to thank all of these groups. I also want to thank the Republican committee staff for working closely with the majority staff to make this bill stronger and turn it into a true bipartisan piece of legislation. Especially want to thank Ms. Herrera Butler for her support, and I'm grateful that we were able to come together to start to solve some of the nation's most pressing challenges in energy. Does anyone else wish to be recognized? Recognize the gentleman from California for 5 minutes.
I thank the chairman, and I thank the committee for moving this bill forward. It's very, very important. This last year in California, we had severe wildfires. PG&E and other utilities had to shut down parts of the grid for days and up to a week at a time. Now, this is going to help not only California, but these sorts of emergencies are going to happen throughout the country because our grid system is aging. We just need to incorporate modern technologies so grid can be switched on and off quickly, and I think this is going to move that effort forward. So I urge my colleagues to support this important bill. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. We will now proceed with the amendments in the order of the roster. The first amendment on the roster is an amendment offered by the gentleman from California. He is recognized to offer an amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment number 1, amendment to H.R. 5428, offered by Mr. McNerney.
I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading without objection, so ordered. I recognize the gentleman for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
I thank the chairman. While the bill under discussion today addresses some of the technical barriers facing integration of certain components into the distribution grid, non-technical barriers remain. This is an issue that was raised in a 2017 National Academies report that focused on enhancing the resilience of the nation's electric system. Namely, there exist certain contractual and regulatory barriers to unleashing the full range of use of distributed energy resources on the distribution grid, including for the restoration of power after an outage, which, as I just mentioned, is important in my state of California. My amendment simply asks the Department of Energy to analyze these non-technical barriers in order to enable greater integration and use of the technologies on the distribution grid. Doing so will enable the DOE to better understand the role that these technologies can play in increasing the overall resilience of the grid, whether they be privately owned microgrids, rooftop solar projects, or devices that feed the energy from an electric vehicle back into the power grid. Enhancing and ensuring grid resilience is an issue that I am very passionate about, and that's why I am a proud co-chair of the Bipartisan Grid Innovation Caucus, along with my good friend and colleague, Representative Bob Lauda of Ohio. Together, we are focused on providing a forum for discussing solutions to the challenges facing the grid and for educating members of Congress and their staff about the importance of the electric grid with relation to the economy, energy security, advanced technologies, advanced technologies being utilized to enhance grid capabilities. I urge my fellow members to support my amendment, and I yield back.
Is there further discussion on the amendment? The vote will occur on the amendment. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. Are there any other amendments? A reporting quorum being present, I move that the Energy Subcommittee of the Committee on Science, Space, and Technology report H.R. 5428 as amended to the full committee with the recommendation that the bill be approved. Those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is favorably reported. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. I ask unanimous consent that staff be authorized to make any necessary technical and conforming changes to the bill. Without objection, so ordered. Members will have 2 subsequent calendar days in which to submit supplemental, minority, or additional views on the measure. I want to thank the members for the attendance, and I want to wrap up the year 2019 in particular by thanking our excellent staff who take good care of us all the time, have helped us pass a large number of authorization bills almost entirely unanimously this year, which I think has been a bright light in this otherwise troubled Congress. Your work does not go unnoticed. It often, probably not often enough, goes unthanked, but we really do appreciate it, and I hope you all have a restful holiday season. And I believe that the ranking member would like to be recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize for my tardiness. Turns out the dog had eaten my voting card. And so I want to say thank you to holding this and appreciate the staff very much and all of the work that they've put in. They do make us look good. They do make us look good.
Some of us.
Some of us. All right. Why did he look at me when he said that? Anyway, I would like to have my statement submitted for the record, if that's fine. And I appreciate you all, and I wish you all a very Merry Christmas, and I yield back.
Without objection, so ordered. The hearing is now adjourned. Thank you.